So in this video, I'm going to continue my story that I've been trying to tell about the state of North American Counter-Strike from the end of 2014 and going into 2015 and some of the first major events that we're seeing of this year for Counter-Strike in regards to NA team participation. Now in this video, I'm going to focus in on iBUYPOWER and the dream team that never was. And I know that this topic may seem a bit irrelevant simply because this is a team that's no longer around and thus they play no part in 2015 and so therefore it's probably not even really worthy of much time spent. It's kind of woulda, coulda, shoulda type stuff that isn't really a big deal now just because this team is gone. But I thought that I would still tell the story, and it won't be quite as in-depth or as long as what I'm trying to do with the other pieces of this series. But I did want to talk about it because it did have a huge impact on Counter-Strike at the very end of 2014 for the North American scene. And it did have an impact on kind of how things went for North America as a community when they went into the MLG Aspen XGames, because this is a team that was supposed to be there that at the last minute had to be replaced and some different things like that. And I think some of the ripple effects of this situation still play into, you know, what talent is available in NA today for recruiting purposes, like what free agents are actually out there, and how teams may construct themselves later on now that this void or this vacuum has kind of been created by the exit of this team from the community. So the story of iBUYPOWER really starts way back in the day of NA Counter-Strike. There was a bunch of different players that kind of came together from previous teams, such as, you know, DaZeD from Area 51 and Quantic DaZeD, and some of these different guys that used to play on Curse, like Skadoodle, and even they had Anger in and out, they had Adren in and out. So it's kind of a collection of a bunch of different players from a lot of teams that had been around the community since the birth of the game. But where I kind of want to start at is just by saying that iBUYPOWER as a team in 2014 was generally very good on North American soil. They seemed to be able to kind of beat their rivals in complexity and what became Cloud9 fairly regularly, especially at ESEA LAN events. You know, they were placing higher than them at the season 15 and 16 ESEA LAN, as well as even at season 17 after things started to crumble for iBUYPOWER roster-wise. And so they always seem to do well on North American soil. They even performed against, you know, European teams very well on North American soil. You know, they had that big upset back-to-back best-of-3 win in the grand finals of the season 15 ESEA LAN against Titan. They were able to you know, best Virtus Pro and then beat their North American rivals in complexity at the season 16 event to get back-to-back ESEA championships. In their online play, they were never very shaky. There was even some instances where they had an undefeated record in regular season play or close, so even online they weren't necessarily very shaky or giving up wins to kind of lesser tier North American teams, something that complexity did somewhat struggle with to a degree. They never were quite as powerful online as they were on LAN, which doesn't really necessarily matter, but it did kind of matter in the sense that there was one season, I think it was season 16, where complexity almost didn't even qualify for ESEA LAN. Like they really kind of had to win some pressure games in order to solidify that 4th seed and actually get into the event. So you know, iBUYPOWER never really struggled with that. They always pretty much had a guaranteed LAN spot and never really had to worry. The thing is, though, is that because of all this success on North American soil, they always had this hype surrounding them because of their results and because of the talent that they had. And so every time that we had North American teams taking trips to Europe, you know, most people kind of had their faith when the event started or prior to the event starting in iBUYPOWER and being able to do something and have an impact at the tournament and represent NA well. However, things never really quite went well for them. To this day, they still never were able to advance out of a group in any of the 4 majors that have ever been played in Counter-Strike. And granted, some of these times they had tough groups. You know, at Katowice, for example, they had to play against Dignitas, which at this time was in their form where they were still making semifinals pretty regularly. And then they had Fnatic, and though this isn't the Fnatic that we saw today, it was still the Fnatic that was able to win you know, the original Dreamhack Winter 2013, the first ever major, and they still had some talent, even though they weren't the powerhouse yet that they are today with, you know, Olaf M and Krims. They were still a good team. So, you know, at most majors, they did kind of have tougher groups, but I mean, the bottom line is with the amount of talent that they had and the success they were able to have against teams on North American soil, you would suspect that they would eventually make something happen at a major, make it out of groups, and get either a similar run to what Complexity and Cloud9 were able to achieve, or maybe even better, you know, just based on how we saw them play against each other and how they how they were able to get results here in North America. Now, it wasn't as if all the trips were bad for iBUYPOWER. You know, towards the end of the year of 2014, things really did take this huge upturn. And it kind of started with Gfinity 3, where this was like the first time they really did have some type of success on European soil. And they were able to, you know, in group play, beat NIP. This was big for them. They were able to tie Fnatic. So they were playing pretty good in the group play. And in the brackets, you know, they got eliminated pretty quick, but at least they were showing signs of something. You know, they were finally able to make it out of a group stage. So it was progress, I guess you could say. However, they went on to Cologne, and this is after the season 16 event for ESEA, where they had, you know, beat Virtus.pro and beat Complexity and such. They go into Cologne, once again, some hype, some potential that people see in them, and they get wrecked. They get crushed by Virtus.pro, like 16-2 on Cash, which is a map that they had beat Virtus.pro on just shortly before, you know, at the season 16 ESEA LAN event. So going into Cologne, they're playing VP again. They're playing on the same map they had just beaten them on. Everybody thought this was actually iBUYPOWER's chance to finally make it out, and they were unable to do so. And then they followed it up with a loss to Fnatic on Cobblestone. So once again, they played against some tough teams in groups, but it was a team they had proven that they could actually beat. Now, granted, the season 16 ESEA LAN event, Virtus.pro did have that issue with Snacks kind of coming into the event late due to family issues, and so there's kind of this asterisk that you put next to that on whether or not Virtus.pro was still in full form. But the bottom line is that Snacks still performed pretty well, and you would think that this should at least denote that they had a chance against Virtus.pro, whereas in this game of Cologne, they just got absolutely crushed. So it was once again iBUYPOWER not living up to the hype or the potential that they had displayed in their results on North American soil, and the perceptions that people had about them from watching them play. They once again just weren't, you know, reaching that level that people expected, or that they had proven to be able to do in some scenarios. But things finally did get great for iBUYPOWER. And it was at FACEIT in Milan, where they were able to split maps with Dignitas in groups to win a tiebreaker to make it into bracket play. And then out of nowhere, they 2-0 LDLC, which was so huge because at this time, LDLC was kind of established as a #2 team in the world behind Fnatic. So to be able to take out a powerhouse like that, to take out an elite level team at a best-of-3 on LAN, this was huge, especially since one of the maps they were able to do it on was Inferno, a map that, you know, LDLC was very good on and still is as envious. Granted, it was this crazy overtime game. It's probably one of the more memorable maps you'll watch between an NA team and a European team, especially in the more modern CSGO era. So that was crazy. Then they get the win on DaZeD. They go on to play Fnatic, and they do lose the series 3-1, but they were competitive in this series. They won a map. They looked close in a couple of other maps. They were playing pretty well. So overall, this looked like a great event for iBUYPOWER. This is one of the best results North America's ever had in CSGO in general, based on the level of competition they were playing against, and you know, kind of the prestige of the event because of that. And this was one of the best NA results that we've ever seen. Maybe the best result we've ever seen outside of maybe some of their ESEA LAN championships and some of the earlier games we saw with Quantic and Area 51 back in the day. This was definitely some good stuff, and so things looked bright. They went to ESWC, made it out of groups again. They did get beat by Navi, but it was too close, I think 16-13 games. So, I mean, and Navi was ranked above them. I think not this time. Navi was probably like 4th in the world or something like that. So it wasn't like crazy surprising, and they were competitive, but it was, I guess, a step down from FACEIT, where they had really kind of had this great accomplishment and built up even more hype around themselves. And then after ESWC, the craziest thing happens, which they cut DaZeD and Steel. And some people have kind of brushed off the cutting of Steel just because Steel wanted to kind of leave the team anyway. And maybe he did actually leave rather than officially being cut. You know, he had talked about not enjoying himself on the team because he didn't really like the fact that, you know, certain players weren't communicating very well, or didn't talk a lot, or were too quiet. And there's probably some other things, too, that made Steel not really necessarily like the team. But the story goes, apparently, that DaZeD, you know, said, "Oh, come on, Steel, you know, we're having some success, just to stick around. You know, things are great, let's keep it going." And this is kind of the story that we've heard from DaZeD and Steel through their streams. Now, I'll say this, and this is apparent, is Steel can claim all day long that his raging and his attitude are never issues on teams that he's competitive with, and it's all a show for the stream, or it's only things that he does during casual play or practice, but in the heat of really important games, he's not like that. And there's two sides to this. One is I've personally witnessed him kind of, rip off his headset and kind of yell at someone next to him for making a mistake or something like that. So he definitely can be very stern in his demeanor and very aggressive, I guess you could say. And maybe some people would find that as quite rude or mean. But in reality, some of the things that he was getting angry about with some of his teammates were very valid things, like them getting killed and not making a call, and because they don't make a call, he gets killed. Those are definitely very valid things to be frustrated about and want to correct your teammates about, but maybe there's different styles about how you go about making those corrections, and apparently the way that he chose to go about it was not the way that the players like to receive it, if that makes any sense. So while I think that Steele maybe did want to quit the team and he had his issues with the team, I also think that there's probably the flip side to that, which is I'm sure some of the team also had issues with him and his attitude and the way he went about things. And it's up to you whether or not you feel that the way he went about things was right or wrong. But the bottom line is that there's definitely two sides to why Steele was no longer on the team at this point. Now, when it comes to DaZeD, it almost makes no sense. Once again, there is citations of attitude issues about him being really kind of stern with how he corrected people and how he tried to, correct things or what have you. And even DaZeD said on his stream after he got cut from the team that he talked to Impulsive, their manager, about it and was like, hey, what's the deal? And, apparently Impulsive had told him about these attitude concerns and such like that. And from what DaZeD said, he was trying to work on it, try to get better about how he presented information and corrected things. But apparently the team still felt that his attitude was an issue, I suppose. But, I mean, everyone just kind of viewed this as a big mistake because they were having success. DaZeD was their in-game leader, a very good one, also a skilled fragger from that role, which is a rarity. And he's a very versatile guy, able to op, able to rifle and call. And, I mean, he just had a lot going for him and what he could bring to a team. And so people kind of view this as just, like, out of nowhere. Like, what is this? Now, some people even say now in hindsight that, oh, well, maybe it had something to do with, the whole throwing the game against Netcode and Sivo. And maybe some players were kind of, eerie about that and kind of wanted to move him out of the team because of him being responsible for that. And that may or may not be true. I don't really know. That maybe that does play some effect in it now in hindsight, now that we know that happened, but it doesn't really matter, I guess. The choice was made, and the results were bad. I mean, when DaZeD leads the team, they go on to DreamHack Winter 14 with kind of two new guys in Nitro and DaZeD, who are fairly good players. I mean, now people have kind of really seen Nitro as maybe being kind of one of these upcoming North American talents, just based on, though the team didn't advance here, he did pretty well individually for his first time at a really big event like this, and he went on to play very well against Titan and such at the Season 17 ESEA LAN for iBUYPOWER. So, he definitely has some talent that starts to develop that people begin to take notice of. DaZeD in his own right has some talent that people take notice of as well, though he doesn't get to play for iBUYPOWER at Season 17 ESEA LAN. It's Adren that comes back into the team. DaZeD has shown that he can play very well in his online play. At ClutchCon, he was very, very good in that Torque Pug he played with individually in his fragging. So, I mean, they had some talent on the team. It's not as if they lost like a crazy amount of firepower, but they did lose a lot of leadership, and there's no doubt about it. Going into the event, they had the easiest group draw ever of any major they ever attended, yet they still were unable to get out. I mean, it kind of went normal at first. They beat Copenhagen Wolves, which was expected. People kind of thought that iBUYPOWER should still be able to do that. But then they had to play against Dignitas, which is now TSM, on Nuke, and pretty sure TSM got CT side first, and they were known to be obviously a very good CT sided team, and especially on a map like Nuke that's already very CT sided. I think they got 13 rounds or something like that on their CT side, excuse me. And, I mean, at that point, iBUYPOWER just kind of had no chance. But this still wasn't very surprising. People kind of figured that they'd lose to Dig, but maybe they'd get out in second seed of the group. And so all they had to do that was beat Penta. And going into the game, they started CT side first, and they won the first half 13-2. This is a very good CT sided Inferno. I know the map CT sided and the game CT sided, but 13 is pretty insane amount. I mean, you expect to get 10 plus, but 13, that's really good. Things are looking great. They're finally going to advance out of a group, even in a situation where they lost maybe one of their best players and their leader. But then they choked so hard. When they went on the T side, they lost 14 rounds in a row in that half, a 14-0 run from Penta from their CT side Inferno. And that's how they eliminate iBUYPOWER from the tournament. This is just like, how do you do that? It makes no sense that you couldn't figure out a way to get 3 rounds against Penta, who at the time wasn't really regarded as that amazing of a team. They were probably nowhere near anyone's top 10 rankings at this point. Maybe they were on their way up to that level, and now they're there in the top 10 somewhere. But it's not as if anybody really had any faith in this team in being like an elite level team or something. It's mind-blowing that they were able to do this. 14-0 run, that's insane. So just a huge choke from iBUYPOWER. Now they go into the Season 17 ESEA LAN, and they take 3rd place at the event. Not too shabby, but certainly a step down from their run of back-to-back first-place finishes. They lost to Virtus Pro right off the bat in the upper bracket. They ran to the lower pretty well, including beating a team like Titan. And then they got eliminated by Fnatic. So this is actually a good run for them, you know, all considering. They beat Titan. They got eliminated by Fnatic, which is understandable. Fnatic was the best team in the world at this point, and they went on to win the event. So there's no real surprise there. So in all honesty, even with DaZeD, they probably would have still placed around this level at the 2nd or 3rd place level. So it's not really that big of a deal, I guess you could say. But after Dreamhack Winter 14, it was very apparent that they had made a mistake by losing DaZeD, because the firepower difference and the ability to frag may not have been different, but you have to think that leadership-wise, something really had to have gone wrong on T-side of Inferno against Penta for them not to be able to find 3 rounds at some point to close out the game, and instead getting a 14-0 ran on them. That's just... to this day, that's unfathomable how you can do such a thing if you really are the better team. And you'd like to think that leadership, calling, the decision-making on T-side, the way they decide the eco or force buy and different things like that, just the different elements of reading the game and trying to call the game, some of these things had to have played a role in why they lost there. And so DaZeD was a big loss, because I really do think they advanced out of reach of this tournament with better leadership in this type of situation. So what happens is after ESEA LAN, the Season 17 event, they're preparing for qualifying for Aspen, and so they put together this dream team lineup. They bring DaZeD back into the in-game leader position in place of Nitro, basically, and then, you know, Adren was only a stand-in for the Season 17 event, so he steps back out, of course, and then they're going to bring in Hiko. So this is going to be like the North American Dream Team right now. I mean, this is probably one of the most powerful rosters, skill-wise, that we've ever seen constructed in North America. I mean, you have DaZeD, who's regarded as the best in-game leader in NA, at least 2nd best, if some people want to say Sean Gares is better at calling or just better at reading the game and scouting opponents, and there could be some arguments there, but DaZeD is definitely at least the 2nd best caller in NA, if not the best, probably the best in-game leader there, also because of his ability to frag and be very versatile outside of the in-game leader ability, which is what you're usually judged on as an IGL, and that is the most important aspect, but the fact that he can add to the fragging department in a big way is a huge bonus. So that's a great player you got there in DaZeD. You have Swag still, who's like this incredibly, you know, young talent that's developing and very versatile, a good rifler, good clutcher, also a pretty good opper, especially on CT side. You know, you can look at, for example, his Dust 2 games where he plays the B bomb site, and he's just very effective with it. So you got this guy on the team. You have AZK, which, you know, gets overshadowed, I think, for the most part. I mean, obviously there's a lot of talent on this team with Swag and Skadoodle and then Hiko coming in, but AZK has always consistently been the 2nd or 3rd place fragger on this iBUYPOWER team for a very long time. He's changed roles quite a lot. He went from being a dedicated opera on Dynamic and Source and in Go in the beginning stages to now being kind of a role player and a support rifler. And he's very good. He may not be the flashy guy, you know, getting these crazy kills every round or flicking all over the place and making these crazy plays that are highlight moments, but he's quietly getting his 1 or 2 frags around and doing his job. And like I said, usually he was 2nd or 3rd place in the scoreboard, even when the other players would vary. So a very kind of rock foundation player in AZK, even if he's not the flashiest guy or the star, so to speak. And then you have Skadoodle, obviously regarded as the best opera in North America, also proved that he has a very strong rifle. When he was playing with iBUYPOWER at the Season 15 event against Titan, you know, Adren was kind of more of the main opper for that particular event, and Skadoodle took more of a rifling role and proved he could be very good at it. So he's very versatile in his own right, being able to rifle and op. And you even saw during the Aspen qualifiers that DaZeD was starting to op quite a lot when he returned to the team, and there were instances where Skadoodle was rifling a little bit, or they'd run double ops. So, I mean, you know, definitely a very versatile guy and a very good player. And then you bring in Hiko, who was regarded as like the best player in North America for almost all of the year of 2013. I think he was even ranked maybe 8th or 9th in the top 25 from HLTV from that year. I'm not really sure. I know there was like debate on whether or not he kind of like earned that spot, but whatever. He was a very good player from North America. He was kind of the rock of, you know, Complexity and Cloud9 for the majority of that year of 2013 and even through the beginnings of 2014. Now, during Cloud9's supposed slumping phase of 2014, yeah, his fragging wasn't quite as good, but he still had a very long streak of being a very, very good player, and bringing him in as a lurker-type role player with swag, or maybe even make him a bit more entry-wise. I mean, the fact is that this team they put together was so powerful, and I think it really was the best bet that North America had going into Aspen to have a good result, just because of the power they had on this lineup. You could argue that there were some other North American teams that were upcoming still. I mean, Cloud9 was virtually unaffected. Yeah, they lost Hiko, but they were going to lose Hiko anyway. So the whole aspect of iBUYPOWER being crushed by all the controversy didn't really affect Cloud9 that much, because they were going to lose Hiko regardless of whether or not that happened, right? So Cloud9's kind of unaffected. And I've already talked about Cloud9 and what their potential is and how they're working to improve after a slump. That wasn't really a slump. It was just maybe not a big upswing that people were hoping for. I'm not going to get into that because I already have my Cloud9 video I did right previous to this one. So they're off to the side. And there were a couple of upcoming teams that I'm going to talk about in future videos, like CLG, who actually beat iBUYPOWER in the first Aspen qualifier to be the first North American team to advance into Aspen besides Cloud9, who had the direct invite. And then you have, you know, Liquid, which was Denial at the Season 17 event, that took 4th and had eliminated Cloud9, and where they were kind of starting to show maybe they could do something in the NA scene. So it's not as if, you know, iBUYPOWER were the lone rangers of NA having a chance of being able to do something at Aspen, but it seemed to be the most talented team skill-wise that was going to be going to this event. Obviously, everyone knows what happens, right? You know, the match fixing, the subsequent bans, all that goes along with that. And I'm not here to make some type of statement on whether or not these players deserve to be banned or kicked. I'm not here to make some type of statement on the moral arguments revolving around this particular topic. I've already done an interview with MLG about this. I've done a short vlog about it. I'm probably going to do an episode kind of like this on my NA series about match fixing and betting and oversaturation in the NA scene, or I might do a hype episode about it. I'm not really sure just yet. But the point is, I'm not going to talk about this here and now. That's a different topic for a different time that I've already kind of talked about elsewhere, and I'll link those things if you're interested. But what I can say is this, and the whole reason why I brought up this story is because it does have an impact on the state of the NA scene. Well, for one, we lose a lot of talent. Regardless of how you want to shake it, whether it's deserved or not, we lost a lot of talent. We lost a lot of really good players that could have been something to help build this really cool team, or set of teams that could represent NA internationally and give us some good results. So you lose a lot of talent. And so it creates this vacuum, this void that needs to be filled. Like I said, Cloud9 is kind of separate from this because they're still pretty much the same, are functional, or they're already doing their own thing in preparations of trying to come back up. So they're kind of unaffected. But, you know, for some other teams and players, I mean, this is big. You still have Hiko and Skadoodle sitting around as free agents right now that are very good players that could definitely help, you know, produce for NA and CSGO. You have a team that, you had actually two teams that are gone, because you have, you know, the iBUYPOWER guys, that team's completely gone. So that's one of the top teams that we had now eradicated. And then it also effectively destroyed Torqued, which granted didn't have any crazy LAN results to back them up, but online they were looking very good. Even though they didn't qualify for Aspen, they made the finals online of both qualifiers, eliminating by iBUYPOWER in the second one, which to be expected, and then they got shocked by CLG in the first. But iBUYPOWER got shocked in that first qualifier by CLG as well. So Tort was kind of another team that might be good for NA that got basically destroyed by Steel and Deborn being gone. So we effectively lost 2 teams that were in the top 5 of NA towards the end of the year of 2014 in the first month of 2015. So that's a lot to lose, especially whenever we were struggling as it was to have teams that could compete internationally for NA. Like I said, I know we have CLG and Liquid on the come up and Cloud9 still there, but we did lose 2 really good teams. That's the bottom line, and that still does have an effect because it creates this void, this vacuum that needs to be filled by upcoming talent. I'll talk about this upcoming talent in my next videos with CLG, Liquid, and I'll talk about some other players and teams that are out there for NA. But there was something created that now these teams I'm going to talk about later have to try to fill in. And we'll have to see if they can do that, if they can step up and kind of be that for North America. So like I said, I know this topic seems a little bit irrelevant because this team's gone, so why spend so much time talking about it? But I did want to just provide a little bit of history of the state of NA CSGO from 2014 to today, and this team was a major part of the year of 2014 for North America, and their absence does create at least some talent that is now absent from our scene. Now, I'm sure some new people can come in and fill in for that eventually, but it is going to take some time for that to happen because a lot of the top talent that we have in NA outside of Cloud9 is very inexperienced against elite level teams, and thus it's going to take some time for them to grow and to build, whereas we already kind of had some talent that was already there and ready to go and now is gone from the scene because of all this situation. So it does have an impact on the state of NA Counter-Strike because, like I said, we've just lost something that could have been great for NA, I suppose, but it's their decisions that made it happen, or the decisions of a few and the many that were affected or that fell into it by pressure or what have you. So that's it. Just wanted to talk a bit about, you know, the dream team that never was and how that kind of had an effect on things. And like I said, I'll be talking about some of the upcoming talent and teams that will now have to fill this void in my next videos. Thanks.